Welcome back to another episode of Cringey Fanfic Rewrite. I am still gonna keep doing stuff for RWBY, because it's honestly the easiest show to think of improvements for. I mean, it's a toss-up between that and Sword Art Online, so you know. Disclaimer 1, spoilers beware. Disclaimer 2, this is the opinion of an amateur artist/writer, so take it with a grain or bag of salt. This week's topic, unlocking Jaune's Semblance. A bit of background to him. Jaune Arc was the leader of Team Juniper, having fought alongside Pyrrha Nikos, Nora Valkyrie, and Lai Ren. Under the tutelage of Pyrrha, Jaune rose from incompetence to become a decent warrior. After the fall of Beacon, the remnants of Team Juniper later joined with Huntress Ruby Rose to form Team Ranger. They went to Mistral, helped stop a similar assault by the forces of Salem, and that's pretty much as far as Jaune's story goes, because Volume 6 isn't out yet. Jaune's arsenal is pretty bland. It's a standard sword and shield. I mean, you compare it to the Swiss Army knives everyone seems to carry, it doesn't stand out. That being said, he did recently modify it so that combining the two forms a bigger sword. So, slightly cooler. His semblance, as revealed in the episode The Vault of the Spring Maiden, is aura amplification. Basically, he can strengthen his or someone's aura even if it's depleted. Congratulations, Jaune, you are a mobile shield battery. Or an Energizer Bunny. Where's that velvet? I don't know. As for Jaune's personality, he's a goofy, nice, and outgoing guy. He's awkward but compassionate and always there for his teammates. Initially, he starts out with low self-esteem and lacks confidence in himself as a huntsman, but this changes after he swallows his pride and accepts Pyrrha's help to train. By Volume 3, he's become a stand-up leader and can hold his own in a fight. Post Volume 3, his goofiness has faded. The losses suffered at Beacon have left him more cautious and cynical, and ultimately he seems to have lost some of that glow from earlier volumes. His design starts out pretty standard. You got your armor, sweater, jeans, everything you would expect on a low-level fighter who has no idea what he's doing. And it fits his character. He feels unexceptional, but desires to live up to the legacy of his family. He tries so hard to be taken seriously in earlier volumes, but the sweater and the jeans just scream amateur, average, uncool. Post Volume 3, his design carries a lot of symbolism. The golden accents from Pyrrha's armor show that even in death, she'll always be with him. Isn't that sweet? Also, it helps liven up his armor a lot more. This looks so much better. I still wish he ditched that hoodie though. I'm not digging the hoodie. Alright, so what do I think of Jaune as a character? A lot of people have criticized Jaune as a self-insert by Miles Luna. And maybe this has some basis, maybe. But I don't want to go there, that seems like very muddy territory. Personally, I think despite the problems with Jaune, he's actually kinda decent. He's likable for the most part, and a source of comic relief in earlier episodes. As someone who also struggles with finding success and confidence, he's kinda relatable. You know, even with his issues of confidence and growing cynicism, he's remained steadfast and stood by his friends. I'll admit, I actually enjoy this growing dark side. I wish Rooster Teeth would delve deeper into it, you know. But yes, the main problem with the guy is that he gets too much focus at times. You know, in the first volume alone, he takes up 4 episodes to cover an arc that could have been done in 2. This means that conflicts like the Ruby Weiss debacle or the Blake Weiss debacle feel rushed because they only get 2 episodes each by comparison. Even in further volumes, Jaune continues to receive a lot of focus. His love pentagon thing with Weiss, Pyrrha, and Neptune takes up a sizable chunk of Volume 2. His trauma takes precedence over Ruby's in Volume 4, and he gets a bigger spotlight than Ruby in the Volume 5 finale. He faces his past pain with Cinder and unlocks his semblance to save Weiss. Wow, this protagonist is so wonderful. You see where I'm going here? He outshines Ruby a lot. It's really glaring. And because of all this focus, characters like Ruby and Nora are often pushed aside. You know, for the first couple volumes, we knew virtually nothing about Nora and Ren aside from the fact they were orphans and they hung out with each other from childhood. Nothing. You shouldn't have to wait 4 seasons to learn something about 2 members of your B team. That shouldn't be happening, right? Fortunately, this has improved as the series has gone on. We've at least gotten a lot more focus on Yang and Weiss. I've been enjoying that freezer burn. I don't ship them romantically, but I think they're good friends. If I were to try and rewrite Jaune's whole character, I'd start with making him more competent from the get-go to decrease the amount of exposition he warrants with his constant questions in the earlier episodes, and giving more focus to the titular characters of the show in Volume 1. We can give Jaune more of a spotlight in Volume 2, but, you know, the first season, first book, you're gonna set up these guys as the main characters, focus on them, okay? Commit to them. Don't start, jumping around to like Bob the accountant, okay? We don't care about Bob the accountant. He's not the one we were teased about, okay? Sorry, I really just don't like Bob the accountant. He's a terrible person. That being said, going back through the entire series and all of Jaune's appearances would take all day, so instead I'm here to talk about one aspect of Jaune in Volume 5 that I feel could have been executed better: his semblance. Jaune's semblance was in question since Volume 1. There were indications of it during his fight with Cardin, but ultimately the issue was only occasionally mentioned. The 2 times anything is said about actually helping Jaune unlock his semblance are when Pyrrha mentions they've been doing it off-screen in Volume 2, and when Ozpin promised to help him in Volume 5. The semblance itself is eventually unlocked as a result of the Battle of Haven, where Cinder reminds him of Pyrrha's death and questions, will you let Weiss die as well? After Weiss is impaled, he rushes to her side, his semblance activates, saves her from death, that's about it. And here's the problem. We've seen it before. It's, something called the Traumatic Superpower Awakening. Character goes through intense grief and trauma, gains a cool new superpower, beats the villain, and my issue here is it's unearned. Jaune did not earn this, at least not based off what we've seen on screen, and this is a common problem in RWBY, characters not earning the power-ups they get. See, at least Goku and Aang are shown training, and in Aang's case actually meditating, so them gaining new cool powers is at least believable. We've never seen Aura training or Jaune's attempts to unlock his semblance, so it feels less impactful when it actually happens. I feel this is one area the show actually should have explored more when it comes to Jaune. The whole point of his character, aside from providing an early window into how the world of Remnant works with exposition, is that he's supposed to be a beginner who gradually improves. So, him getting his cool superpower after significant amounts of training should have been a highlight of his development. Instead, it's non-existent. But anyways, let's get started. To do this, we'll incorporate another plot point in Volume 5 that also lacked focus, the training arc. Remember when Ozpin promised to train Team Ranger in Volume 5? It was the perfect opportunity to force the main characters to go beyond their current selves, confront past experiences, and overcome their flaws. And it's relegated to 1 awkward sparring match and 2 conversations. That's all we get on screen. No Ruby Silver Eyes training, no RENORA action, and no attempts to unlock Jaune's semblance. And it barely plays a role in later episodes, which makes me wonder why they bothered bringing it up at all. But anyways, the training will be key to this rewrite. We start sometime after episode 4. So after RWBY gets her ass kicked like in the show, we get Jaune and Ozpin training with Aura. This would probably revolve around meditating, because Aura is the projection of the soul, so meditation. Ozpin tells Jaune to clear his mind and visualize himself. Jaune tries to clear his thoughts, but he keeps hearing someone calling for him. Ozpin asks, what's distracting you? Jaune tries to play it off as just the heat, but then RWBY asks what's wrong. Jaune explains he keeps remembering Pyrrha. He asks Ozpin why he asked Pyrrha to become a maiden, and Ozpin replies that he thought Crow explained things already. But Jaune argues that they knew she'd never say no to something as important as becoming the savior of the world. She felt like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. And so he asks, did Pyrrha really have a choice? Ozpin says nothing. Jaune then asks how many other people this has happened to. RWBY tries to defuse the situation, but Jaune pushes for answers. Ozpin tells Jaune he's asked countless others to make similar sacrifices, and explains that despite all his power, he could never succeed on his own. He's not omnipotent. Jaune, channeling a bit of self-loathing in his response, bites back with, so you just drag others down with you? Nora then steps in and points out that the only reason any of them are still alive is because they dragged each other out of Beacon. Jaune shoots back that what happened at Beacon wouldn't have happened if Ozpin had done his job. He points out Oscar as another example of someone Ozpin's used. He tells the kid that he shouldn't even be there, and that he doesn't deserve to be used like that. Like, Pyrrha didn't deserve to be used like that. RWBY, ever the idealist, jumps in. Yes, things are unfair. Yes, Ozpin shouldn't have kept things from us. But he did what he thought was best for humanity under the circumstances, and that's all any of us can do as huntsmen. Jaune looks at RWBY and asks, and is our best ever enough? Jaune promptly leaves the room. Crow returns after checking the mission board for his contacts like a smart person would. He bumps into Jaune in the hall and notes his attitude. Jaune keeps walking and Crow doesn't push further. When Crow checks in with Ozpin, the latter tells him to add one more name to the list and gives him a location, the Mistral Armed Forces headquarters. Osmond tells RWBY that Crow, in his old age, needs help finding the contacts on his list. He suggests that RWBY divide the group as a way of developing her leadership skills and testing out the various teammate dynamics. Before she calls everyone together, Crow reminds her not to call him old. With Team Ranger gathered, RWBY explains the situation. Crow, in his advanced years, needs help tracking down the contacts on his list. We'll split up into teams of 2. Each pair will get a portion of the list along with the corresponding coordinates. Ren and Nora, since you two have the best synergy, I'll keep you together. Search the upper-class neighborhoods in the inner ring. Crow and I will check out the seedier areas downtown. Wouldn't want you getting poisoned again. And Jaune and Oscar will go to the outskirts in the northwest. The Mistralian military HQ is located there. Jaune immediately questions why he's being partnered with Oscar, to which RWBY replies that they're the least experienced members of the team and could help each other improve. She also notes they'll have Osmond with them anyway, so they should be fine. And Jaune begins to object again, but Crow's glare shuts him up. Don't question his niece. Alright, bit of an intermission. Exploring Mistral. Now for a bit of a break. We can't let Jaune have all the spotlight. With Team Ranger going around the city of Mistral, this is the prime opportunity to show off more of Mistral itself and even add some development for the other members of Team Ranger. In the actual show, Ranger actually doesn't really do much in Volume 5. I mean, if you look at it, they arrive, they sit around, they train, and then they sit around again, they get their asses kicked, Jaune does something. That's about it. That's about all Ranger does the entire volume. And Mistral as a city is barely explored. So I'll try and fix those too while we're at it. Multitasking. During the search, Ren and Nora could look around the upper class areas and find other relatives of Ren or even clues of Nora's heritage. After all, Ren's parents were apparently amongst the richest nobles in the kingdom, so it's not impossible there'd be some peeps in Mistral who would recognize Ren. Maybe someone would note Nora's similarities to, I don't know, some famous person or something. I got nothing. Also, we might get some Ren-Nora stuff, because why not? Favorite couple, and it's official. Well, it's official and it's still kicking. Sorry, Arcos. As for RWBY and Crow, we get some of Crow's moments from the episode known by its song. This would allow for some exploration of the supposed Mistral black market mentioned in an earlier World of Remnant episode. In this case, stuff like the bar scene would be tenser since RWBY would be paranoid that Crow could almost get killed again. After several more close calls, Crow asks RWBY what's wrong, and she explains that ever since Tyrion almost killed Crow, she's been worried for him and her teammates. She keeps thinking about all the friends she's lost, and that with her powers, she feels like she has an obligation to master it and protect them from danger, just like her mother. Crow reassures RWBY that they can take care of themselves, and that they can't account for everything that happens. Ultimately, RWBY still isn't convinced. We now return to Jaune. Oh god, it's like the actual show all over again. Don't worry though, I'll get to the main characters by the 6th episode. Hopefully. Now things are understandably awkward between Jaune and Oscar as they go to the military hub. Jaune won't say anything, and Oscar is afraid of Jaune projecting his anger towards Osmond onto him. Despite the mission board listing their targets as available, the commander present explains that all of them had been deployed at the coast by the Mistral Council. Bit of an impromptu order. He mentions something about a potential conflict with Atlas's forces. Jaune gets frustrated and sits off to the side while Oscar and Osmond have a little mental chat. He isn't the first person I've let down, you know. Countless lifetimes have shown me that failure is always the likeliest outcome to anything. Then why keep trying? Because there's the slightest chance things will go differently each life. So, you gonna talk to Jaune then? He needs time to cool off. I can't get through to him in his state. Not alone. So, I'm your arbitrator? Great. I'm sorry. It's fine. I should be used to getting dragged places by now. Does this have something to do with the name you asked Crow to add? Yes. Jaune needs something I can't give. Something this person might grant him. Closure. Jaune asks what's the point of searching if none of their contacts are available. Oscar tells him to try for the last name, and if that person can't be found, then they can go. But at the very least, they tried. Jaune asks for the name of a woman named Thetis. For those of you familiar with Greek mythology, you know who this is. The commander sends them to one of the rooms in the medical ward. Jaune and Oscar pass by several wounded and hear murmurs about the latest clash with the Atlesian military. As they encounter more dead or dying soldiers, Jaune begins to give up. Oscar announces that they're at the room. The patient inside has bandages around his chest, and the monitor shows that his aura hasn't been able to recharge in some time. Jaune walks to the nearby window and quietly apologizes to the patient. Oscar shakes his head and asks Ozpin what this was supposed to mean. Ozpin tells Oscar to trust him. A nurse walks in and tells the two of them that they shouldn't be in there. Jaune turns to apologize and... bam! Pyrrha's mom. And that is the end of part 1. I didn't plan on it being so long, but unlike the Hazel episode, I got more into depth with the recapping and the actual specific dialogue, so it's probably why doing stuff for the main girls will take forever, okay? But anyways, this will be continued in part 2, alongside the analysis, so stay tuned.